Keep the gravy train rolling. 23. It's Long Riders. Alright, I was curious about this one because it got cute girls. I think it's not over though because it got like the second half or something got postponed a lot. Well, we'll see if I even make it that far. So I'm going to watch at least a little bit more of Long Riders, but there was a thought just I had to get out of my head while watching the first episode. And I might even make a full video about this, which is just about how this show really tries to be feelsy. And like as I was watching it, I couldn't help but draw comparisons to K-On! And Bakuan. Bakuan in particular because it's another show about girls on bikes, this time real bikes instead of motorbikes. And Bakuan was sort of taking the piss out of K-On! To some degree. Like it's pretty much just K-On! With bikes and elements of Top Gear, as the artist himself said, the manga artist. But like Bakuan was sort of making fun of itself and its genre, and like is almost ironic in the way it approaches the same kinds of subjects that K-On! Does, even if there is an underlying sincerity that kind of comes through in the later episodes. But you know, it's basically like K-On! But making fun of itself for being that. This show has a lot of the same elements. You've got the girl who doesn't really have anything going on in her life. She feels like she's never had anything she's talented at or gotten into. She sees a bike and wants to start biking. When she sees the bike she wants, she gloms onto it and starts referring to it as though it were, you know, a person, which is all stuff that happens in both K-On! And Bakuan in the early episodes. But the thing about this show is that it's like just trying to have feelsy moments. There's no build up to it. Like the main girl is immediately like rattling off all this stuff about like how her life has been and how she's like why she's interested in this bike, and like as soon as she gets on the bike she's having this magical experience and talking about how, you know, different it is, and oh my god, it's so beautiful seeing the world from on top of a bike. And it doesn't help that the soundtrack is like way over the top, like as melodramatic as it could possibly be. Just these like swelling orchestral sounds of inspirational music because she's on the bike. But I don't even care yet. Like I don't know any, like I haven't seen these characters in their casual scenarios. I don't really like know them or care about them enough to feel something about this girl riding a bike for the first time, you know? And it reminds me of how, like, in K-On!, for instance, Yui is looking for some kind of change. And you hear about that in the first episode, kind of in the background. It's not like the main focus of the episode, but you kind of learn that Yui is, you know, hasn't really done anything with her life, and she's hoping to get into something. And by the end of the first episode, she doesn't even really care about light music. She's still kind of afraid of the club. And in episode 2, she starts to warm up to the idea of it. And it's not really until, like, midway through the season, really arguably at the end of season 1, that it all clicks that, like, she's found her thing, you know? And there's a legitimately big emotional moment at the end where it calls back to the first episode and, like, you know, brings you to that place. And Bakuan, meanwhile, sort of makes fun of it the whole way through, where the girl has the same kind of arc as Yui does, but in like a sarcastic way, where the show's kind of making fun of her for being an idiot. This show just jumps right in to like, you know, just like rattling off what the character's life is like, how biking is going to help her, how it's so magical and it's transforming her life immediately. And it just comes off as kind of hokey and forced. Like, it just wants to be the emotional moments of K-On! Without actually having the build-up of K-On! Or the interesting characters or, you know, detailed artwork. So, yeah, it was driving me crazy throughout the episode. Even though, overall, it's not bad. Like, it was not a bad episode. There's some strong elements. I'll talk about it more when I continue this after watching more episodes. I just wanted to talk about that because it was burrowing into my brain. And I also want to mention how this show does a thing that I hate in lots of sports anime, but especially like cute girl sports anime, which is where they take the like basic mechanics of the sport very seriously, or like the meta aspects to example what I mean, like the girl is riding the bike with her friend, and then she gets tired and like her legs lock up or whatever because she didn't eat that morning, and it's like they have like a specific term for it, like she has like hunger stuck or something like that, and then these other girls come along and one of them's got like a nutrient pack and she eats the nutrient pack and now she feels better and ready to go, and it's just like with shows like this they always make those things so like hard line, like, yeah, if you don't eat you fail on the bike, and then if you eat this nutrient pack it makes you feel better, you know. I guess it's sort of a Japanese thing in general to like take those basic like bodily functions and that kind of structure very seriously, which is just like not how it is in real life. You know, you don't like automatically go through these steps just by it's like when if you were to read a Wikipedia entry on biking and like the different things that you have to look out for to become a biker, and then you like translated that literally into the story. Those kind of things bother me, but anyways, I'll keep watching it. Alright, I gave up halfway through episode 2 of Long Riders. It's boring. There's things I like about the show. I like the character designs a lot, and I like how they animate. Like, when I first saw the designs just in an image, I thought they looked weird as shit. And then, but when I saw, what made me want to watch this show is I kept seeing, like, little clips on, like, Sakugaboru or just, like, GIFs of it around on A. And I thought, I just really like the way the characters look, particularly in motion. I like the way that I just like the whole aesthetic of the show. It's got this very, like, homey, earthy feel to it. There's lots of, like, camera effects and, like, depth of field effects that look really good. Even the CG looks pretty good when they draw, like, when it's, the girls riding bikes, sometimes it's in CG and it looks alright. And, it's one of 3 shows from last season that all have this weird design trend of eyes that are slightly too big and too close together. I don't know where this came from, but like Flip Flappers and Ping Pong Girls and Long Riders all did it. Very odd. I haven't seen much of Flip Flappers to like compare, but I think Long Riders is the one I like the most out of the 3 visually. Like, well, not the whole visual of the show, but the character designs specifically bother me the least in this one. They're kind of cute. In like a weird, cute kind of way. Unconventional, but I like them. So the overall look and feel of the show is alright. It's just that it's fucking boring. Like, I don't really care about any of the characters, and it really is just a show about girls talking about bikes. And I know that sounds weird coming from me, because there's a lot of people who would think that this is my kind of show, that all of them are like this, you know, people who aren't that interested in this. I'm noticing, whatever, this camera just picks up whatever's best lit, and, you know, the light is right above the couch, so the couch is, like, in full focus and looks amazing, and I'm, like, this fucking shitty, washed-out image. Whatever. This show, like in a way, the best thing about a show like K-On! Is that it's not really about the music. And now, there's plenty of drama that can come from, like, playing music, but there's a reason that there's not a lot of scenes. What I meant is there's a lot of drama that can come from, like, being in a band or trying to be successful as a musician, and a show like Beck explores that. And when you have a concert scene, it can be, like, a great payoff to a bunch of build-up, you know, to play an emotional song or whatever. But if the show was just characters sitting around talking about different styles of, you know, picking and like how to put your, like, if they were like teaching each other how to play guitar, it'd be a boring show. You know, if Bakuan was just actual information about bikes as opposed to like weird, hilarious information about bikes, it'd be a boring show. Like, that show, you know, a lot of Bakuan is literally like one character explaining to another how their bike works, but it's presented with like each character is describing bikes in a different way. Like, they all have their own unique takes on how bikes work and what the appeal of them is. You know, getting into these weird fandom arguments. One of, like, sometimes the bikes talk for some reason. You know, like, it's a weird show that does interesting things with those discussions. This show is literally just girls talking about fucking bikes. They're just like, they sit around in a cafe and they're like, haha, I sure do love riding bikes. Don't you love riding bikes? I also love riding bikes. Here's some facts about bikes. You can ride a bike. There's a race you can do. Bikes sure are fun. I love bikes. Let's go to the bike store and look at bikes. Ugh. It's just, it's like, you know, whenever there's a show that's about a subject that I'm not interested in, what I'm hoping it will do is to rope me into being interested in it. You know, like this is back before shows like Haikyuu and Kuroko no Basket came out and like really made like sports anime more popular as they have been in the last like 5 years or so. I would always see this argument that like people had to really defend sports anime because most anime fans are not into sports, particularly in the Western fandom. And people would always be like, I don't want to watch anime about sports because I don't care about sports. And it's like, well, most of the time the show is not really about sports. It's about the narrative. It's about the character and their journey through the sport, and it gets you to care about the sport. Most people who watch Hajime no Ippo probably don't care about boxing, but by the time you've watched Hajime no Ippo, you suddenly are interested in boxing. And that's how the great, sports anime work. With this, and so like with those shows, when I go into a show that's about something like biking, what I'm hoping I will do is come in with not giving any fuck about biking and end up learning that the culture of biking is fun and exciting, and I want to know more. But what this show makes me feel like is that biking is every bit as vapid and boring as I would have imagined. That like there is nothing exciting about biking, and that people who bike just sit around and talk about how much they bike. Like that's the way this show makes me feel about biking. Is wow, biking sucks and is boring because all you do is sit around and say how much you bike. So yeah, that's the impression I've gotten from it from the episode and a half that I watched. I just got really bored, and yeah, it feels like a really soulless version of a show like Keion or Bakuan, like one without any sense of self or purpose in the way that those shows have. All right, let's watch something else. Okay, the end is practically in sight. I mean, notwithstanding the whole long shows list, but I can smell the ending. 19. That's Soul Buster. Don't know anything about that. Okay, I couldn't even finish the first episode of that. It was really boring and stupid and dumb looking and all right, move along. All Out. That's the Studio Mappa, I think, sports anime. I know my brother Victor watched the first episode and he thought it was boring, but I'll give it the honest, to give college try. Okay, first of all, I actually rolled Bloodivores and just misread and tried to watch All Out instead. As for All Out, I could not. I can't. I don't care. I'm through with mediocre sports anime. Wake me up when they make another season of Baby Steps, or Hajime no Ippo. I promise I'll catch up with Hajime no Ippo before they make another season. To me, anytime I spend watching a sports anime that's not Hajime no Ippo is just time that I'm not spending catching up on Hajime no Ippo or Baby Steps. So there's no point. It was boring. Anyway, I guess I should watch Bloodivores because that's what I actually rolled, and I'm sure I won't make it far in this either. So, yeah, I'll do that. Alright, look, I'd heard that this show was just like some dumb, badly animated Chinese bullshit knockoff anime that was not worth watching, and that's all true. But really, like, I mean, I considered dropping this on the basis of how bad the OP was, like, in terms of editing and just looking bland as shit. But, like, the weirdest thing about it is the pacing of images. Like it feels like, I want to say bad editing, except that, like, I don't know that anime is typically animated beyond the length of a shot. Like, in film, if there's a clip that's 1 minute long, but you're gonna you start filming and then the characters act and then you stop filming. You have to cut out the midsection and go back and forth between actors and stuff. In anime, it should just be all planned in the storyboard and then you just literally animate it, according to that plan. But this show, somehow every image lingers as though if it was in a real film and you didn't cut out the beginning and ending part where you started filming and stopped filming, that's what it feels like. Every shot just lingers too long and it's really unnerving and weird and feels gross and horrible. And I mean, aside from that, it just, kind of looks like dog shit. So, whatever. That is a dumb show. I have no reason to watch more of it. Alright. Number 2, Occultic 9. Alright, I've heard very wildly varying things about this show. I've heard stuff going in every which direction, and most of all, I've heard that the first episode is a total and complete clusterfuck, so I'm really looking forward to that. Well, you're all not going to believe this, but I actually finished and enjoyed Occultic 9. I've blown my own mind, because this is the first time I've both finished and enjoyed an A1 Pictures show in 7 fucking years. Not since Sora no Oto, The Sound of the Sky, back in 2010, did I both finish and enjoy an A1 Pictures show. There's a few shows they've made that I haven't finished that I think I'd enjoy. I was halfway through Suritama and enjoying that back in 2012. Even that would be 5 fucking years ago. And it's particularly odd because this one seems to be a show that a lot of people don't like. There's a lot of negative reaction to it. Even when I brought it up, just, merely on Twitter, I got a bunch of, sarcastic responses about it not being good. I don't know why. I haven't actually looked into any of the criticism surrounding this show. The main thing I'd heard back when it started was people criticizing it for moving too fast and calling the first episode a total clusterfuck. I didn't think it was that at all. It seemed it moves really fast, but it's no faster than the Tatami Galaxy. Everyone fucking loves that show. They definitely are, a lot of the dialogue in this show is definitely being played in fast forward. I sort of, it was interesting for me because in the last month or so, as a result of my job, I often have to watch shows to completion. Well, not often, but I sometimes have to watch shows to completion that I have no desire to watch. For instance, some of the shows that I had to watch for The Plebe and the Weeb. And I started getting into the habit of when you're 5 episodes deep and this show is hot dog shit and you have to watch the rest of it anyways, put that shit in fast forward. Started watching stuff at double speed, and surprisingly it makes a lot of boring shows easier to watch because I just get all the fucking information and don't have to wait around. And VLC is really good about speeding things up without changing the pitch of anything. So that's what this felt like. It felt like watching a show in fast forward, and to me that was the perfect pace. I mean, granted, there is no breathing room in this show. There's never a scene that has time to breathe. I definitely think this show could have benefited from being slightly longer and being able to give its scenes more time, but I wasn't really bothered by the speed of it. The only time it did bother me is in a couple of episodes where, for whatever reason, they had the camera constantly turning sideways and upside down and shit, and the combination of reading all the text and seeing all these weird sideways images gave me a total headache. But that only happened a couple times, and overall I thought it was a fun show. My first impressions after the first 2 episodes, I was this is basically if you took the plot and characters of Steins Gate, the characters kind of fill the same roles, and the plot is the same kind of conspiracy mystery thing going on. If you took that and combined it with the presentation of Durarara, and I looked it up after episode 2, and surprise, surprise, the guy who wrote Durarara wrote this show. After I found that out, it was uncanny to me that this feels exactly like one of the later seasons of Durarara. Which is to say, It's a total clusterfuck. There's 1,000 characters that you're following, and you're never quite sure why anything's relevant until, pieces start falling into place later down the line. But just like do da da da, the stuff that's happening is interesting and cool enough that I keep watching anyways, even though I don't really know what's going on or really care or know who any of these people are. Just like the way that people interact is fun, and the way that the things that are going on, like seeing like all this crazy death and like the 256 people turn up dead in this pool in this lake, and then there's like half the characters may or may not be dead, and there's fortune tellers and all this cool stuff. It's a fun time, and it presents it all with like a wacky tongue-in-cheek kind of vibe to it. It's not like a serious mystery drama thriller with like a dark it's fun, like violent crazy things happen, but all with with characters who are just having a good time, and like upbeat music and fun visual style. um it's basically do da da da. Like, this feels like another season of do da da da, but with new characters. Nothing that happens in this show would be too out of place in do da da da. Like, it could just be a plot line of that show, just without all the recurring characters, which is fine by me, because even though this show's not as this show's at best as good as the later seasons of do da da, which are okay. They're all like 7 out of 10. I remember the second season of season 2 being the best, but the other two are just kind of 7, and this is a 7, specifically because it doesn't have these more gripping, emotional character narratives. Like the first season of Do Da Da Da, like where it introduces all the characters and sort of gives you their backstories and why you should care about them, and then has some of the best, like, big plot moments, is by far the best part of the show. And really, it's the fact that you love those characters so much already that helps them to carry the later parts of the show when things get fucking confusing and at times just boring as you're waiting for like everything to slot into place. Occultic 9 never got as boring as the later seasons of Do Da 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 could get, where like there was no point where they just introduced a new character and had a whole episode about them, and I was like, who the fuck is this, and why do I care, and how does any of this connect back to what I'm watching, I mean, with Do Da Da Da, there were times where I legitimately, for episodes on end, didn't even know what was happening. I was just watching it because the stuff that was happening was kind of fun and cool. This show I was able to follow a lot more easily, so it didn't have that sort of negative problem, but it also doesn't have nearly as memorable of a cast. I don't really remember most of their names, any of their names. They were fun to watch. There's a couple of choice waifus in there. You got the glasses girl who's always screaming Ascension for some reason, and the cute blonde psychic girl. So there's some. The characters are fun enough to watch, but they're not memorable. None of them has like a really gripping backstory or motivation or anything like that. It's just kind of an entertaining show, with lots of cool, fun concepts. Now, I will say that like the last episode, things get a little over the top with what the science that's going on behind everything. I love shows that like can cleverly give like bullshit scientific excuses for why weird supernatural shit happens. And this show does a great job of that as it goes along. And it's just like explaining all this crazy shit to justify its plot as scientific. And I thought that was really fun. But then in the last episode, they kind of push it into a new direction where it's like, okay, I don't get why it can, like basically, without spoiling anything, what happens is electromagnetic energy can do anything. It's the kind of thing where it's like the whole plot is based on this certain kind of like power source being able to do these things. But in the last episode, they take it like beyond the impossible, that it can just basically do anything. So it kind of feels like an ass pull. And then the very ending, I don't want to spoil, but it's a little confusing about what happened to a certain character. But nonetheless, it was an enjoyable time. Even though it was like pretty dumb at the end. It was dumb in a fun way where, the plot goes in the direction you're kind of expecting and wanting it to go. Um, I would say that this show is it unveils information at a good enough clip. Usually a twist would happen very shortly after I had predicted that twist was going to happen, which is always fun. Like if I had predicted it and then it took like a long time for it to happen, that would be annoying. But it was more like I went, I'll bet that this is the case, and then that would be revealed by the end of the episode, and I was like, oh, I was right, cool. So yeah, I found it entertaining. I had a good time. It did not really suffer from the problems that I usually accuse A1 Pictures shows of. It had, strong directing with a very clear like voice behind it. I mean, really, a lot of the tone of the show is just governed by the fact that like it totally is that writer's style. Like the fact that it feels so much like Durarara or Bakano or anything else that he's written. And I'm like the anime adaptations of those. I mean, like the anime of Bakano and Durarara were both written by the same guy, and he has a knack for like reworking a complicated story into a way that like threads it all into an episode structure, and it just feels like one of his shows. So. Like it didn't even strike me as anything other than that. And the character designs are pretty distinct. The overall look and feel of the show is pretty distinct. I wouldn't say that it's like amazing. The look and feel of the show is it kind of is like a weird mishmash of stuff in the way that A1 shows tend to be, but it's not like it didn't feel generic or tired. It didn't have the A1 face, as I like to call it. It was its own animal. And I had fun with it. So I don't know what everyone else doesn't like about it. Maybe you guys are going to tell me in the comments. I mean, if your problem with it is just that the plot is dumb, then I don't blame you. The plot is kind of dumb, but I don't know. I think all plots are dumb, so like I feel like half the time that I like a show that nobody else seems to feel that strongly about, it's almost always because they think the plot's dumb, and I'm like, yeah, it's a show. All shows are dumb. I don't know. Maybe that's why I have a weird taste in my plot driven media, but yeah, that's it.